Okay, so let's get right into this. One of the things that I want to talk about and how people understand is that everybody out there has a different opinion about Elon Musk and the D.O.G.E team. And one of the things that's missing from that understanding is essentially a historical reference to where the SSA is at with fraud. The Social Security Administration has had fraud forever. It's always had that woven into kind of the fabric of its existence because at the end of the day, the big problem is it's a lot of money leaving the US Treasury relatively quickly. Now, as a result of that, Elon Musk and DOGE have not found the biggest, the largest, the most massive frauds that have ever occurred against the Social Security Administration. Now, what they've been talking about and the age groups and things like that, sure, some of those individuals over 100 are getting a check still. They shouldn't. It's a problem. Notice the wiggle waggle language that was used. They can't say they haven't all gotten it, but most likely haven't gotten it. So as a result of that, I want to billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars that DOGE did not find because these things happened and were prosecuted before DOGE and Elon Musk ever even existed. And they were recent too. The reason I'm doing this video is because I want to point out what OIG is and that OIG is in fact working. Now, has OIG missed things that Elon Musk has found? Yes. But for the most part, OIG has been on top of that. We're going to be going through the first article notification from the Office of Inspector General, 7 individuals indicted for Social Security fraud. Then we're going to be going to the $500 million fraud from that country lawyer. And then we're going to be going through the $72 billion fraud that occurred. And then at that point, you'll have an understanding of the largest fraud ever committed against the Social Security Administration and how all these timeline wise came before Elon. Now, I just wanted to go ahead and make a quick point with this. This video is to show you where Elon and DOGE were not existent yet, and the largest portions of fraud against the SSA had happened directly before the creation of DOGE. This should point out to you, essentially, that the SSA OIG is working. It's just overloaded. They don't have enough people to do what they need to do to catch the fraud. The counter argument to that is that people don't want OIG to be any bigger because then it strengthens their ability to investigate people who are receiving benefits. Now, here's the deal. The next video I'm doing later tonight will go specifically into essentially all the techniques and all the technology that the OIG and SSA are using to go ahead and investigate you guys in the future for potential allowing you to keep your benefits or remove your benefits. It's going to go through the players, who's actually, in harm's way and things like that. Let's get to this article real quick though. All right. October 5th, 2022. All right. So basically before DOGE, this is back in Biden's territory. But realistically, they started working this a bit earlier. All right. San Juan, Puerto Rico, on September 29th, 2022, a federal grand jury in the District of Puerto Rico returned 7 separate indictments charging 7 individuals with Social Security fraud. Okay. So this is the end of the story. Basically, September, October of 2022. This is after years of them prosecuting these people. And this is kind of the middle of Biden's presidency that they're finishing this one up. The Social Security Administration Office of Inspector General, Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General, the FBI, and the Puerto Rico Police Bureau are investigating this case. The 7 defendants, quote, arrested yesterday stole thousands of dollars in Social Security benefits that didn't belong to them. They stole them from the government, from victims, and even from victims that had passed away. We remain steadfast in our commitment to bring to justice unscrupulous individuals who illegally seek personal financial gain, said W. Stephen Muldrow, the United States Attorney for the District of Puerto Rico. Quote, these arrests represent our commitment to hold individuals responsible for defrauding Social Security programs as evidenced by the more than $1 million fraud loss in these collective cases. Our collaborative efforts help to protect taxpayer funds and preserve much needed programs, said Gail S. Ennis, the Inspector General from the Social Security Administration. Remember the one that was kind of put in by Trump, but then attacked by Biden and disgraced, and then she left early? Quote, I thank the FBI, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of the Inspector General, and the Puerto Rico Police Department for their assistance. I also appreciate the high level of support that the U.S. Attorney's Office has shown us in seeking prosecution of those who commit Social Security fraud. And I thank the Special Assistant U.S. Attorney Vanessa Bonanno for her outstanding work. Or Bonanno, I'm not sure. All right, so here's the charges. Here's what happened to them. The defendants and charges are, number one, Sonia Vargas Rodriguez was the owner and representative of Hogar Sendero de Amor, Inc., HSA, was an elderly care facility located in Mayagüez, I'm not sure, Puerto Rico. She had SR and RF under her care. These are two people that she was caring for. They both passed away in 2013 and 2014, respectively, and the defendants failed to report their deaths to the SSA and continued collecting their Social Security checks. In addition, the Puerto Rico Family Department closed HSA in June of 2014 due to claims of negligence and abuse. Counts 1 and 2, wire fraud. The defendant sent electronic transmissions of fraudulent representative payee reports to the SSA, SR, and RF. So basically, she reported that they were fine and alive, although obviously they weren't. Count 3, theft of government property. The defendant received $114,590.40 illegally from the SSA. So for all of you people out there who screamed into the comments on prior videos that this group and that group and this group and that group are required to automatically report when somebody passes away, and therefore fraud is extremely unlikely. Fraud happens all the time. Don't fall into being one of those people who thinks that the computer system at the SSA can't be coded or modified or some area allowed to input data that would change the outcome of a computer allowance. Don't be one of those people. All right. There's a cult out there of people who are like, believing that the systems we've built are absolutely perfect and the systems we've built are magically delicious. It's just, I don't understand how, and I do and I don't. I get a lot of people don't have a college education, a master's, I get that. And that's fine. Most Americans are not supposed to have those things because A, you got to have the student loans to do it or somebody making the money happen for you or some company. And then B, to call like it is, you got to have the intellectual prowess to, rock and roll through all that stuff. And then even then, some of the brightest people that have doctorates, sadly, they just mentally have never had any experience with coding. So they believe the computer is always right, which is weird. You guys know back in the day when I was in law school and even before law school, I used to build websites for extra money. So it's weird. It's super weird for me when somebody's like, "Oh, Elon is mentally challenged." And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, wait a minute. The guy who builds rockets, the literal rocket scientist, that the darling of the left for building super amazing electric cars, that guy is below average intelligence. Like, how would you get that deep into a cult to be a part of that? Like, how would you get that meant for a person to build a company? They have to almost always be above, basically a certain intelligence level to handle payroll, insurance, hiring, firing, all of the internal legal documents. You need to, you know what I mean? Especially nowadays with all the legal requirements. So it's a very interesting thing for me to see how these different political cults are developing at this point. Todd Sellers, thank you for the $20 donation. I really appreciate that. He said 50% incredible developments, bro. Please public charge rule and whether it should be applied to all non-citizens, foreign nationals applying for any SSA programs. Yeah, that's a good video idea. Todd, can you shoot me an email at the info@disabilityresolution.com email? That's a really good video idea. That's an amazing video idea. So here's the thing. This right here shows you that facilities don't always report the loss of an individual receiving a check, and they still continue to receive that check. Okay. Now, do facilities get in huge trouble when they do this? Absolutely. Does the SSA always catch it? No. But again, remember, this is not a perfect system. Next one. Yahaira Cruz Cintron. Count 1, theft of government property. The defendant received $196,772.75 from the SSA illegally. Count 2, false statement. The defendant provided false statements to the SSA in a work activity report that she worked in the continental United States for 8 years when the reality was that she didn't work. Count 3, healthcare fraud. The defendant received illegally $164,694.03 in Medicare payments. All right. So again, you got another person who's receiving a bunch of Medicare payments. You got another person who's claimed that they've worked in the United States when they didn't actually do the work. So you end up with $196,000 paid out to this person from the SSA illegally, around an additional $164,000 from Medicare payments. Okay? Massive fraud. Massive fraud. We're talking about 2022 prosecution somewhere during Trump's presidency is probably when they started doing the investigation. All right? Next person, Norberto Barrios Rodriguez. Count 1, theft of government property. The defendant received $129,346.30 from the SSA illegally. Count 2, false statement. The defendant provided false statements to the SSA in a work activity report. He stated that he started working on August 2021, but in fact, he had been working since before that date. Okay. Count 3, concealment or failure to disclose event to SSA. The defendant failed to disclose that he was working and continued receiving the SSA benefits. Count 4, healthcare fraud. The defendant received illegally $33,608 in Medicare payments. All right, so what can you learn from the people we've talked about so far? Number 1, facilities don't always report that people die, and they still keep collecting the benefits. Number 2, the SSA purposely tricks those potential criminal individuals with a work activity report, a 3373 report, a 454 report, any one of these types of reports, or the other report that they send out when somebody's older and they're just checking to see if they're still alive. They send these out to trick the criminals to put down a statement that the person is still alive. That's what they do. Okay. And then another one right here, the guy basically wasn't working when he said he was working. And then another one says that he was working when he said he wasn't working, and ultimately kept working while he was receiving his disability benefits and did not report that income. These are your classic things where the SSA is going to nab you and do criminal prosecution against you. So just be aware. But remember, later tonight around 10-ish, I'm going to go through all the different things that the SSA does to investigate people so that you're going to have an understanding. And I'm doing this video, and a lot of people are like, why so much gloom and doom? This is a happy moment for you. I'm showing you specifically how the SSA could F you. I'm showing you specifically the techniques they use. This should be a happy moment for you. A lot of you are like, oh, why so much doom and gloom? Why fear? Why so much fear? Because if I don't show you, the other channels won't. You'll just get a bunch of BS, future stimulus, future, payment dates and crap like that from those other channels. I'm showing you how they do it so that if you're being an idiot, you can change being an idiot and do things more properly. I'm showing you because I don't want you to be doing something and then have them be, oh, look at this, and then all of a sudden you're in trouble. The goal is for me to get you guys to keep your benefits. That's the goal here. And if it ever scares you, maybe that's not a bad thing too, because a lot of disabled people, without fear, they don't have action. Without the fear of something coming, don't do this, they're going to lose that. A lot of time, and I've seen it thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of times. But the bottom line is this: if somebody knows they have a hearing coming up, all of a sudden they're going to medical when they haven't gone to medical for a long time. It's that fear of the upcoming. It's the fear of the change of the routine that seems to empower the disabled to save their own butts, which is what it is. Next one, Luis A. Soto Torres. Count 1, theft of government property. The defendant knowingly and willfully embezzled, stole, purloined, and converted to his own use $122,483.90 from the SSA, which payments were made payable to MSC, and the defendant knew he was not entitled to receive them. In other words, this is a person who's stealing money from a disabled person at the tone of $122,000. Next person, Maria Alices Cora Martinez. Count 1, theft of government property. The defendant knowingly and willfully embezzled, stole, and converted to her own use $59,079.30 from the SSA, which payments were made payable to LLM. That's the person who was receiving the benefits correctly, and then this person stole them from that person. And the defendant knew she was not entitled to receive them. I can go through the claim details later specifically on these, but what usually happens is there will be some kid there'll be some family member, or there'll be a drug dealer who basically steals the money from these recipients. And as a result of that, puts them through this hell where they're supposed to be receiving a benefit, but, somebody always jumps in and takes the money. Janice Rodriguez Mendez, count one, theft of government property. The defendant knowingly and willfully embezzled, stole, and converted to her own use $18,784 from the SSA, which payments were made payable to ARL, and the defendant knew she was not entitled. So just to be clear, these are all people who were prosecuted in 2022. Okay. If convicted, the defendants face the following maximum penalties: 10 years of imprisonment for theft of government property and healthcare fraud, 5 years of imprisonment for false statements and concealment or failure to disclose the event to the SSA, and 20 years of imprisonment for wire fraud. A federal district court judge will determine any sentence after considering the U.S. sentencing guidelines and other statutory factors. During fiscal year 2022, the U.S. Attorney's Office prosecuted for Social Security fraud a total of 8 additional cases via information, 6 of which have been sentenced, for a total loss to the SSA of $529,000. So $529,334.80. Okay, that was Special Assistant U.S. Attorney Vanessa D. Bonanno Rodriguez. She was prosecuting the cases. All right. Now, that's a big number. That's a big number. But that's not the level of fraud. Again, that is not the level of fraud that we're going to be seeing in these next cases that came before that Elon's D.O.G.E missed the opportunity to actually be a part of. I'm sure they've studied them because, when you go study law, you study the big cases first, so you get the big understanding. But I'm sure Elon, who was assisted by the new commissioner to figure out who, what, when, and where as to how the system works, I'm sure Elon was looking at this situation saying, well, holy cannoli, this is some big money theft right here. All right, this one specifically from, let's see, Scott Cohn reported on this one, specifically from American Greed. And I remember this one. This was a learning experience for all disability attorneys, all SSA staff, and all the people that lived in that state. How a country lawyer pulled off the biggest Social Security fraud ever and why it could happen again. Now, there's a problem with this title. This title is not actually the biggest Social Security fraud. It's not. The biggest Social Security fraud is over $72 billion. Okay. And that was missed by Elon Musk because D.O.G.E was not created yet. And it was literally discovered by, OIG about, a couple of years before, essentially, in combination with everything before D.O.G.E was put together. And then it was written about the $72 billion fraud on August 19th, 2024. So I'm sure Elon was studying that as a result of how bad it was getting. Let's go back to this one. This is the middle ground one. They say this is the biggest. It's not the biggest. All right. How a country lawyer pulled off the biggest Social Security fraud ever, and how and why it could happen again. Let's get through it. This was Scott Cohn who wrote this, published March 30th of 2018. Okay. So this is pre-D.O.G.E. All right. I want to show you this picture because this picture kind of shows this person doing his thing. A lot of attorneys saw this. Get a Social Security SSI lawyer, Attorney Eric Conn. Ironic with the last name. Bottom line is he frauded the SSA and did a massive amount of fraud. Let's go through it real quick. All right, how a small town lawyer pulled this off. The bigger the pool of taxpayer money, the bigger the magnet it is for fraudsters. And there is not much that is bigger than the 2.8 trillion Social Security Trust Fund. But even by those standards, the 500 million fraud pulled off by Kentucky attorney Eric Conn, the largest Social Security fraud in history, is mind-boggling. Quote, Conn had a brilliant business design, said attorney Ned Pillersdorf, who is working with Conn's victims in an interview with CNBC's American Greed. Set up shop, do a lot of advertising in an area where we have a lot of people who are truly disabled, bribe the judge, a corrupt judge, and he made millions. Disability insurance is a key feature of the Social Security system. People who have worked and paid into the system long enough can receive benefits, but under strict federal rules, they must show that their disability prevents them from working in any capacity and is expected to last at least 1 year. All right, the 12-month rule. Operating in Kentucky coal country. So basically, Kentucky, a lot of injured people, a lot of people who are out of work. Coal country has been very rough, okay, for Kentuckyites, all right? Where thousands of jobs have been lost and many people rely on disability payments to get by. Conn advertised himself as Mr. Social Security on billboards and in commercials that saturated the local airwaves. He promised he could win disability payments that people could not secure on their own. Now, you'll notice I never promise or even say or even allude to me winning every single claim or, having a perfect record or any of that BS. There's no way. There's no way to have that. You could have a judge that just doesn't like the claimant, doesn't like the impairments, and it could be listing level criteria and they still get denied. You could have that. You know what I mean? You have to appeal it up and appeal it up, but you could have that. If any of you have applied for disability and gotten denied, and you felt what the hell, but then found disabled later, right? There's a lot of things that can happen inside those SSA buildings to make it not a perfect circle. Then also there's a lot of people who apply who aren't truly severely impaired. So there's that too. Conn seemed to have the track record to prove it. Under federal rules, disability lawyers collect a percentage of the claims that they win, up to $6,000 per case. By 2010, Conn was the third highest paid disability lawyer in the country, collecting $3.9 million from the Social Security Administration that year alone. Okay, I don't make anywhere near that. Okay, what Conn was not. I mean, I don't even even know what the percentage is, but it's way less than that. What Conn was not telling clients or the Social Security Administration was that his purported 99% success rate was the result of hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegal payments to Social Security Administrative Law Judge David D.O.G.E, who essentially rubber stamped the claims. When the scam finally came to light, the Social Security suspended disability payments to some 1,700 recipients. Again, 1,700 recipients, leaving many in desperate straits. Widespread damage. Leroy Burchett was a former printing press crewman and delivery truck driver plagued with debilitating pain after 2 spinal surgeries. Literally, this is an example of why I do these videos so that you can understand, I want you to not get to this spot. You don't ever want to be in this spot. Okay. You don't want to be investigated by, the US federal government. You don't want to be in a situation where you can't work and your benefits are being taken away. You don't want to be stuck in that spot. All right. He had gone to Conn after his 2 spinal surgeries, debilitating pain, as a last-ditch effort, according to his wife, Emma. When Leroy got word in 2015 that his disability payments would be cut off as a result of Conn's fraud, Emma says the pressure was too much to bear. Quote, "So my husband's just in complete panic because, everything's gone," she told American Greed. He said, "I don't know what I'm going to do. What are we going to do?" End quote. Within days, the panic would take a dark turn. He got up that morning, and it was like he was a totally different person, Emma Burchett recalled. Quote, "He came through the house yelling and cussing at me and cussing at the kids. He was throwing things and kicking things. It was just crazy. I opened the door, and he was sitting on the edge of the bed with a gun. I took the gun away from him, and he said the same words to me again. He said, quote, 'You're not going to stop this. Nothing can fix this.' Quote, he stormed back outside and my kids were standing right there. And he said, 'I just can't take this.' And he pulled another gun out from behind his back and he shot himself in the chin." Conn eventually pleaded guilty last year to a 2-count federal complaint of stealing from the government and paying illegal gratuities, but he fled while awaiting sentencing and was sentenced to basically 12 years in prison. Finally captured in Honduras in December, Conn is being held without bond. Let me read that again so you understand it. Finally captured in Honduras in December. They tracked him down there. Conn is being held without bond pending additional charges related to his escape, to which he has pleaded not guilty. And federal prosecutors claiming Conn violated his plea agreement are seeking to try him on an 18-count criminal indictment, including conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, and destroying evidence, which Conn has moved to dismiss. Doherty, who admitted accepting $609,000 in bribes, pleaded guilty to 2 felony counts and is serving a 4-year prison sentence. Okay, so just to be clear with this whole situation, just to understand exactly what's going on, the judge who allowed for basically $500 million worth of fraud, who accepted $609,000 in bribes, has pleaded guilty to 2 felony counts and is serving only a 4-year prison sentence. Now, I don't know about you, but a 4-year prison sentence for that much fraud, I don't know. That seems light. But at the same time, it's a federal judge. I don't know. You know what I mean? let me know what your thoughts are as to whether you feel like that's a proper, 4 years is a proper sentence. To me, it seems a little light for that kind of money, but at the same time, maybe not. You let me know what you think. But for hundreds of Conn's clients, okay, the people who were found disabled that were then questioned by the SSA, the nightmare endures. Pilsdorf is part of a team of attorneys trying to help. He posts regular updates on his Facebook page. This is one of them. One of the main reasons he does this is basically suicide prevention, which is awesome. Number two is he basically lets people know what's going on who feel abandoned. So that's good. And that's one of the things you have to kind of keep in mind here. There is a place with these benefits that you don't want to get to. And one of the problems that I see, because I have claimants who pass away waiting for disability benefits because it takes way too much time. I have claimants who very clearly have suicidal ideation, they have anxiety, depression, panic attacks, PTSD. When you take an unstable brain, when you take a person who's financially unstable that was used to being financially stable, and you put them in this position, they're much quicker to jump to the idea that they've lost everything. Technically, you don't really lose everything until, you're having those final moments as a homeless person. But to have a bunch of stuff and then lose a bunch of stuff, the trajectory towards suicidal ideation is far greater. And that's why these videos and these other people who are trying to stop, people from making those choices, it's incredibly important. It's more important than you realize. And that's the other thing too. A lot of you guys kind of have, especially the people who've been found disabled for 10 plus years, 15 plus years, there was this ego. There was this egotistical, like, all you have to do is just be the disabled person and, you're disabled and you'll get it. There was this obnoxious ego about how they could never lose their benefits, or the benefits should never be or could never be questioned, or, you'll just be found disabled if you're disabled. There was no back to it, right? Those people didn't know what the law was. They didn't know what the culture of the SSA was. They didn't know how the laws changed it. They didn't know how the culture changed at the SSA. But there was this massive ego that was so hurtful to future generations trying to get disability benefits. And I guess from my perspective about this, I guess from my understanding is that, a lot of these individuals have hated me because I've burst their bubble, and they would write these super mean, aggressive FU emails and FU phone calls. And what I've learned about that abuse that I had from that portion of the disabled community was that, it's not all of them. It's just a portion of them, and trust me, I would get the abuse from people who were found disabled 15 years ago, high levels of it. The abuse from people who were veterans in the 70s and 80s when they were serving. And then, mostly, and then as a result of that, I would explain to them what's going on with the VA benefits. I would explain to them what's going on with, essentially the Social Security benefits, how the culture is changing. And I became the enemy, the messenger, the person. And, the thing is, if you go back in time, I talked about a lot of this stuff happening, the culture changing 10 years ago on YouTube. And the weird thing about it is that it came true, but I have had haters through that process. And the haters have changed. The haters used to be mostly far right prophet, believing they are God or the only direct connection to God, individuals on the right. Now, the people who I get the most abuse from are the people who are on the far left with, extreme, beliefs, the multicolored hair, the screaming to the camera saying they're perfect and they're the majority. I still get a little from the far right, but it's mostly from the left now. And what I've realized is that the swing of how these news stations get you to believe something or get you to understand something, but they don't use the law. They just use entertainment to get your brain to feel a certain way. And that's what I've really realized. They can make a lot of money, not by telling you the truth, but by feeding you emotions and then kind of giving you a path to whatever truth they want you to believe. And I had a person yesterday screaming at me about how Elon was the dumbest person, and he's a complete idiot, and how could he be this way, and da 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 da. And I said to her, I said, look, you've got to understand, you're part of a cult, and that just infuriated the person over the phone, and I was, they, you know, and to me, I just don't get it. Like, I don't, I get, you can hate Elon for a lot of things, but to say a guy who's like worth, I don't know, 300 something billion, 500 something billion, an obnoxious amount of money, right? Who runs massive companies, mostly just to be a programmer and understand programming for computers, you can't have basic, medium, low intelligence. You have to have at least average intelligence to do coding because you have to do analysis in a hierarchy taxonomy based system. I don't know how we got this far off. I don't get it. I don't get how people have been this misled. All right. So, meanwhile, the Social Security Administration, the government watchdog agency that oversees it, are trying to make certain that nothing like this happens again. Obviously, they don't want people committing themselves because they feel like they've lost everything. Quote, "It's very helpful when we have these large scale cases," said John Grasso, special agent in charge at the Social Security Administration's Office of Inspector General, New York Field Office. "It often does lead to changes." He said Social Security has stiffened penalties for disability fraud, particularly for what he called facilitators, including doctors, lawyers, and third party representatives. The agency is also working more closely with other government agencies, including law enforcement, to analyze claims that the claims data that signals the potential fraud. In 2015, Congress increased funding for a program known as, and this is the introduction. This is the first step. This is the precursor to Elon Musk's D.O.G.E. Let me read the sentence to you again. In 2015, Congress increased funding for a program known as Cooperative Disability Investigations, enough to put CDI teams in every state. This was to follow people around receiving benefits. This was to investigate people, etc. Okay, 2015, they got their own mega special funding to make sure that they had an office in every single state. And then they've also got hub offices throughout the states. Although it took them a while. I don't think they have an office in every single state right now. I think they lost one. I think it's like Maine or something. But bottom line is they share major offices in different states. Grasso said that those tools are already bearing fruit. His office helped bust a ring of New York City police and firefighters collecting fraudulent payments for mental disabilities, as well as disability scam in Puerto Rico involving dozens of doctors. Still, Grasso is appealing to the public for help. He urges people applying for disability payments to be aware of third parties such as potential bad attorneys and claims representatives who make grandiose promises. Yeah, guys, there is no perfect way to win disability benefits. The adjudicators that we deal with, the claimants that we have, right? The disabled people, they're all imperfect. They don't fit perfectly into the system. That's why the system's so tough, because you have to get enough of the things that the judges like to go ahead and usually get approved. And as a result of that, most of you don't know what the judges like. So it makes it a lot tougher for you to get the benefits. And then there's countervailing forces, right? Counter arguments to that, of course, where there's systems set up where it's hard to be found disabled if you're under 50. It's easier to be found disabled if you have certain types of impairments like blindness, etc. So, there's things that make it tougher. All right, so now we've gone through what they claimed was the biggest fraud that ever happened to the Social Security Administration. They claim that, right? They say, this is the biggest fraud ever. It's not. The biggest fraud that's ever happened to the SSA was a $72 billion improperly paid amount of money to Social Security recipients by the SSA because the politicians, government employees, American people did not put enough effort into the rules and regulations of overpayments to keep this from happening. $72 billion. August 19th, 2024. Okay. Let me show you real quick. Hold on right here. IG reports nearly $72 billion improperly paid recommended improvements go unimplemented. What do I mean by that? What do they mean by that? The Office of Inspector General has been talking about problems that the SSA needs to fix for a long time. A chunk of those problems and those recommendations have been put in place, but another chunk hasn't, which has led to a $72 billion improper payment. Now, some of you will say, well, improper payments aren't fraud. Absolutely, they are, because they are scamming the trust funds by not having a proper and adequate system to prevent overpayments from occurring. They're frauding the U.S. taxpayer. They're frauding the U.S. beneficiary. Okay. All right. With that said, for immediate release, August 19th, 2024, 23 billion of this still remains unrecovered. Okay. So we're talking about, 50 billion they've gotten back, 49 billion, but 23 billion still remains unrecovered. Okay. Through several audits, the Social Security Administration's Office of the Inspector General made dozens of recommendations for the agency to prevent improper payments before they occur, as well as to detect and correct existing improper payments. However, to date, as of August 19th, 2024, many of those recommendations remain unimplemented, leading to continued improper payments. Okay. This was released right at the end of President Biden's presidency. Okay. Now, with that said, I just want to note, look, a lot should have been done to fix this. You saw Commissioner Kijikazi get dragged in front of the senators. You saw Commissioner Martin O'Malley get dragged in front of the senators. Martin O'Malley and his team did a lot of big changes, which are very smart changes to this massive issue. So, in my opinion, he did an amazing job. But still, it's not where it needs to be. Okay. The report preventing, detecting, and recovering improper payments summarizes OIG's audit work regarding improper payments, which OIG identified as a major management challenge since fiscal year 2002. So more than 20 years ago. Improper payments can be overpayments when the SSA pays someone more than they are due, or underpayments when SSA pays someone less than they are due, although overpayments seem to happen more, From fiscal year 2015 through 2022, the SSA estimates it made nearly $72 billion in improper payments, most of which were overpayments. While this is less than 1% of the total benefits paid during that period at the end of fiscal year 2023, SSA had an uncollected overpayment balance of $23 billion from that $72 billion due. Big money, big money. Most of the unimplemented recommendations address two reasons. Now, just so you guys know, the SSA OIG team, the Office of Inspector General, produces a report. The report goes ahead and basically provides details as to things the SSA can fix or shore up or whatever. And if some of the fixes are small and easy, some of the fixes are massive and take, years, decades sometimes. But OIG's sitting back and saying, guys, we keep telling you what the problem is at the SSA. The SSA people can't fix it. They're not getting it fixed. It's not done yet. Why not? And that's what the senators were saying as well. Most of the unimplemented recommendations address two reasons for improper payments in SSA's programs. Number one, beneficiary self-reporting information and insufficient controls in SSA's automated and manual processes. In other words, the claimants can be bullshit artists, and they lie. And the other thing is, claimants don't know the rules. So sometimes they violate the rules and then they get an overpayment because they just didn't know. Sometimes it's nefarious. Sometimes it's just they didn't know. You know what I mean? And a lot of them are those people who were found disabled way back in the day that just go ahead and, hey, yeah. And then boom, they get hit with an overpayment. And then the ego just drops. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, how did this person, and you know what it is? It's just a lifetime of believing you're like some, I don't know, beneficiary wizard that nobody could ever say you weren't disabled, stuff like that. The culture of the SSA is changing. It's 36 trillion in debt. It doesn't have the money. It's looking at its finances. The SSA is worried. All right. Barbara Behan, howdy. Good to see you. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the pairs. I did. Oh my goodness. I have to catch up with you about that, by the way. I do have to catch up. Super thank you for the donation, but I also have to catch up with you about that. So, can you call me today at the office? That would be amazing. So, absolutely. Definitely give me a call. Because I did enjoy them. They were amazing. They were actually, it was like a meal for like a couple of days. So it was really, really amazing. And they were really fancy too. Like they had the, one of them was like wrapped in gold and stuff. I don't know what the deal. I think it was the I don't usually get fruit like that. It was like a fancier fruit thing. So it was cool. Very cool. Thank you. But call me later. So I want to officially give you like a real thank you. But, okay. So And sorry for not calling you back earlier. I've just been, as you can see, it's super early and super late, running and pushing, and the new thing that I just found out, which has been like, so Sweetie just got done with her surgeries. Now Shadow isn't able to walk on one of his legs for some reason. We got a thing, an image, and basically Shadow's leg. It looks like he's going to need on one side a total hip replacement. Which, to be fair, on small dogs they don't usually do that. So, and then it's extremely expensive. So I gotta like magically find the money and find a surgeon who can do that, because apparently actual hip replacement on a dog is like a specialist of a surgeon on top of a specialist of a surgeon. It's very rare. So, all right. Now, with this said, most of the unimplemented recommendations addressed. So OIG's audits confirmed SSA's reliance on beneficiaries to self-report changes in their circumstances resulting in improper payments, obtaining data that assist with making eligibility and payment determinations from external sources, such as other federal and state agencies and financial institutions, is critical to preventing and detecting improper payments. Put another way, what's basically happening is that the SSA does not trust the claimants to report what's going on with their finances. And to be fair, claimants are going to get stuck in the spider's web, if you will, because the economy's total shit right now, and they need extra money on top of their benefits. So I don't really blame the claimants for needing to get out there and work and get money. And then also at the same time, I don't really blame them for not knowing the rules and regulations at the level that they should, because there's just so many. There's just so many. The bottom line is what the SSA tries to do is they're like, if you have a financial change, something's going on, some money's coming your way, just report it. That's kind of like their new way of approaching it, because there's just so many rules and regulations. Now, SSA also has not implemented a number of recommendations related to its processes to recover overpayments and issue underpayments. OIG's audits found the agency's actions to process over and underpayments were not always effective or consistent. In fact, they found that there were some lack of notice violations, lack of specificity notice violations, where they didn't put specifics enough in there as to why they were taking the money back. Because when you take money from somebody, it's like a legal thing. You got to outline why, you got to outline how, you got to outline when, all that stuff. SSA anticipated a new debt management product would address many of the recommendations. However, the agency stopped implementing efforts in fiscal year 2024 because the new product was not funded. Okay, so bottom line was the SSA asked for money to make a fix to this, just wasn't funded. Improper payments. So, quote, improper payments have been a long-standing challenge for the SSA. And by the way, I'm not going to go into President Biden and why it wasn't funded. You can figure that one out on your own. Quote, improper payments have been a long-standing challenge for SSA. While the agency has taken actions to address this challenge, it needs to do more. The OIG's recommendations can guide the agency as it determines those correct actions, said Michelle L. Anderson, Assistant Inspector General for Audit and Acting Inspector General. Without better access to data, quote, increased automation systems modernization and policy or legislative changes, improper payments will continue to be a major challenge for the SSA into the future. Let me translate that for you. What the current acting OIG is saying in a practical application setting is that a lot of you believe Elon is not a lot. It's less than the majority, but it's still a lot of people believe that Elon Musk hasn't found any fraud at the SSA. That is incorrect. The SSA, in the way that it actually does its production of benefits as a result of overpayments and underpayments that occur, will definitively create billions of dollars worth of fraud going forward. Although it will be slower because a lot of the changes Commissioner Martin O'Malley put in, which is why I talk well of him a lot. So as a result, Elon's going to get some low-hanging fruit to claim abuse and fraud very easily just by how the SSA is set up to work right now. So when you're like, well, Elon's got the IQ of an IQ of 85 and he's never going to find anything. If you're part of that cult, the SSA's system, the way it's set up, is going to produce successful results for Elon and D.O.G.E. because in 2024, they didn't properly fund a system to fight these overpayments better. Okay. I'm not going to get political because we're going to stay in the middle with this thing. You know what I mean? as opposed to the extreme left or the extreme right. But, if you want to know what's happening, it's one group is kind of failing both groups are failing to figure out how to implement the OIG stuff by paying for the fixes. And as a result, this opens up the opportunity for Elon to find fraud and continue to push the look what we found, look what we found, look what we found. Okay. SSA has taken some steps to improve the prevention, detection, and recovery of improper payments. For example, in October of 2023, SSA initiated a comprehensive review of overpayment procedures, policies, systems, and communications to determine where it could make improvements. That was Commissioner Keisha Kazi. She was another really good commissioner. She did a really good job. Okay. SSA is also developing an information exchange to obtain monthly earnings data from third-party payroll data providers, which may reduce the occurrence of improper payments for beneficiaries who work while receiving benefits. And I'll do a report specifically on that. They've pretty much implemented a lot of it at this point so that they have access to when you're getting payments and they can cut off the benefits for that month to, not allow an overpayment to occur. All right. Now, I've given you a lot of examples of the largest fraud that occurs against the SSA. So if you're part of that group that says there's no fraud, please have a little talk with yourself. If you're part of that group that says Elon's never going to find fraud, please have a little talk with yourself. Okay. I just went over $73 billion worth of fraud that's occurred over the past, it's less than 20 years. Okay. All right. With that said, I hope you understand why I did this video. This video is the precursor to the next one that I'm doing tonight, which is going to outline the investigation techniques that the SSA through OIG and their secret police, and also D.O.G.E and Elon Musk's system, the techniques that they're going to be using to investigate people in the future and the current techniques that are being used. I want you to understand them. Am I giving you these techniques because I want you to be able to, use them against the SSA? No. Am I giving you these techniques so that, basically you'll know if there's a red flag in your life and you can correct it? Yeah. I don't like seeing people lose their benefits because I've seen people give up everything. I've actually been there when somebody gave up everything. And I got to tell you, like you can ask veterans about it. It's, what I mean? It's not a good thing. It's an experience. It's not like a video game. If you've ever played those, the hyper realistic ones and everything, there's no, like, you don't know that person in that video game, and it's not real blood, it's not real loss. So my point to you, and I hope you understand this, and I think it's incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important. You have to, if you have a red flag in your life, watch tonight's video. We'll go through what the red flags are. We'll go through the stuff that they use to investigate you. We'll go through the things that ring the little bell in their office. If you have one of these, please, please, please get your stuff together, fix it so that you don't have an issue. Okay. I'm not asking you to be an angel going backwards in time. I'm just asking you be a little bit closer to one going forward. All right. Curry, thank you for the $50 donation. That's absolutely amazing. Curry, that is incredible. Thank you for the $50 donation. I put a little heart on there. Super mega thank you. And I really, really appreciate it. And guys, just so you know, my next thing that I'm doing is I'm getting rid of this desk and setting up a triangular table, which is going to allow me to interview people. And I've got the microphones. I don't have all the cameras yet. I have to buy 2 more of those cameras. And then basically I have to buy this little, it's like a little digital controller for the cameras. It's like $1,000. But the bottom line is these funds help me buy this stuff to then get to the next level and be able to do interviews with people, bring them into this basically, room converted from a bedroom into essentially, future discussions that will talk about amazing things as weird and wacky as how alien technology in the future that we can use now will be able to save disabled people's lives and help humans live longer, to things that are like concrete with actual people who've worked for the government who now have retired and will come onto the channel to go ahead and give you updates as to the internals of the SSA while they were working there. All right, Attorney Walter Hnot, the most viewed and subscribed to disability attorney in America, the most clicked on disability attorney in America. With that said, I will catch you all a little bit later. Please remember, tonight I'll be live. Tonight I am going to be doing the last video where I answer questions for free for anybody who has disability questions. And those videos, I don't get a lot of views on those, but they do pump me up for Friday, because by Friday I'm usually just dragging my butt across the floor. But they do usually pump me up by the good vibes. So I do like those. I will catch you a little bit later. Please remember to take care of yourself, and please be safe. There's a lot of stuff going on over in Europe. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Middle East. There's a lot of stuff going on over by Russia. There's a lot of stuff going on over in China. Please be safe. Please take a look at some of that stuff. It's not getting put up on the legacy news channels, and some of it's quite spicy. So, anyways, I will catch you a little bit later. We'll go from there. Please remember to like and subscribe. Head over to Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida. Throw some stars up there on that Google page if you want. And then with that said, also, I go live on Mondays and Thursdays. And then if you need a full hour, like a private session for me to fix something or go through something, there's a link for a little mini contract below where you can buy an hour, and we put you during my lunch period. And basically we go through all the questions on the situation that you have to create a timeline. I will catch you a little bit later. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I'm going to get on calls with the law firm, and we will go from there. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye.